my name is Jacob, and I am a Norse Pagan. And today, I wasn't planning on filming. In fact, I just got done sitting down and taking my notes for Odin's week. So I'm about halfway through the notes of the Poetic Edda, writing down everything we know about Odin. And of course, reading the Have 'em All again, getting through that. So many notes on the Have 'em All alone. And I think it's always important to sit down and read that. I think it's probably one of the most important, pieces of, really religious work we have to kind of base this religion off of. It always gives me something new as I read it. And this time, it's something that I've both been working on, in my mind the whole time I've been here in Europe, but also something that really hit me today. And that is to always wander and wanderlust. It doesn't say this directly in the Have 'em All, of course, but this is something that I've always attached myself to, especially on the ideas of a European trip. So one of my favorite movies of all time is called Midnight in Paris. It was made quite a few years ago, and it has Owen Wilson in it. And it's basically about a guy who is a writer who is having a creator's block, writer's block, whatever you want to call it. And he's spending time with his fiancée, who's very American in Paris. And all he wants to do is walk the streets of Paris, specifically at night. And she just doesn't get it. She lives that fast-paced lifestyle, and her family's there as well, and they're living that fast-paced American lifestyle, and they don't stop and smell the roses, so to speak. And throughout the movie, it's quite fantastic, really, because while he's walking at night, he just so happens to travel through time. No explanation, it just happens. And he ends up going back to 1920s Paris, and meeting like a bunch of really, prominent figures at the time, like Ernest Hemingway, Salvador Dali, Picasso, and basically, seeing how they lived and how they viewed Paris. And essentially, the movie all boils down to the fact that people don't stop and enjoy the time they live in anymore. Everyone wants to go back in time and say, oh, it was so much better back then. Of course, the main character says, oh, it was so much better in the 20s. But people in the 20s were like, oh, it was so much better during, the 1880s, the artistic revolution then. And he just doesn't get it. He's like, no, the 20s are the best time. And it made him really reflect on the beauty in the time that he lived in. And at the end of the movie, he literally is just walking through Paris and decides to move to Paris, leave behind the life he had before. It's really an amazing, beautifully made movie. I really recommend. But that's something that I've really, come into this experience here in Munich in Germany, really, really reflecting on, is walking with wanderlust. And what I mean by that is walking not with a purpose, not with, this Western mindset, not with this modern mindset of, having a destination, saying, oh, I want to go see that, that church over there, or I want to go to the most famous site here. But it's really to walk without a purpose, to wander, as it says in the Have 'em All as well. But this is where I, of course, take it a step further in my own, explorations, something, of course, taking from the Have 'em All, reading it, having my own experiences. Of course, now sharing with you, is really all this video is as I've walked these streets here, as I've seen these old buildings, as I've explored Bavaria, Munich, and Germany, I've learned, again, how to walk with wanderlust, because I was living that fast-paced lifestyle as well, where I always had a purpose, always had a destination. Even in these videos, sometimes I would always have a purpose. Right now I have the next 12 videos planned, and while that's great, it's great to be organized. A video like this, I did not have planned at all. It was only something that popped into my mind that I felt like sharing with you. I feel like I'm really circling the drain on the point of this video, but what I mean by walking with wanderlust is, on my walk between the train station and where I got coffee this morning, it took me probably 20, 30 minutes, even though it was only, a couple of blocks. And it's just because I was really trying to absorb this city. I was looking at the beautiful architecture, thinking about the history, how much has happened here, really thinking about people walking these streets in top hats and the old outfits, and what it would have looked like, 150 years ago, 200 years ago. Just imagining those people also probably longing for a different time. They probably didn't actually love what they were seeing. They were probably longing for the future or the past. And I know in this modern age, it can be really hard to really enjoy the now. Trust me, I know. I'm living in this age along with you. And I know a lot of us are questioning, why now? Why is all this happening now? But I would assume people were thinking the same thing during World War I or World War II, or, the Great Depression, or, the Black Death, the fall of Rome. Human history is messy, and there's been dark times and good times all throughout history, and there will be good times again. And I could argue there's good times now as well. But I think it really takes us to really absorb the moment we're living in, to not want to necessarily long for the past. And that's something as pagans, I feel like the reason a lot of us follow this faith is because we have that longing for the past and how people used to view the world. But I would argue, at least for the sake of this video, that, being a pagan now is an amazing experience. Yes, I have my gripes. I know we all do. I'm very critical of the internet, but again, that's how we're speaking right now. The reason people were pagans in the past, or their viewpoints on it, were much more brutal. War and death were all around them. The fight for survival was real, to be an actual Germanic or Nordic pagan. But now, we don't have those basic needs, at least not to the same extent our, ancestors did that struggle. We don't have to necessarily hunt for our food. We don't necessarily have to grow our own food. The ability to have children is much easier nowadays. It's not perfect, but you don't have to worry about 50% of your children dying of horrific ways, or the chances of death in childbirth are much less now. We have access to much better medical care. So a lot of those basic needs are met much easier now. I'm not saying that everyone has an easy life, but the ability to have an easy life is much, much easier to attain nowadays. And so we have the ability to walk with wanderlust, to explore nature on a deeper level that even our ancestors may have never actually experienced. And I've had this thought before, and especially like hiking, the casual hike. This may have never actually been a thing. I mean, obviously, they had to travel in the past. They had to travel between villages, travel for trade, travel across the ocean, and I'm sure they found enjoyment in those things. But as far as like hiking, I mean, that's something that I feel like is a very modern thing. We have the time and the ability to say, hey, let's just go for a hike. Let's go explore waterfalls. In our free time, we can do so much more. The fact that I'm in Germany right now, that while it wasn't easy to get here, it was much easier to travel across the ocean than that would have been, 1,000 years ago. So my point being is that we live in a very strange time. I know that. But that doesn't mean there isn't good in this world. And especially as pagans, we have the opportunity to really explore this faith in a way that our ancestors never did. We don't have to fight for survival. We can actually take our time and stop and smell the roses. We live longer now than they did back then. So I really recommend the next time you're in a cute little town, it doesn't have to be Munich, it doesn't have to be European. Next time you're in a city, walking around, or next time you're in nature, have no purpose. Just walk around, admire the beauty of this world, stop and smell the roses. I think I've even mentioned this before. This is something that I've always wanted to press in this channel. At the end of the day, this channel is sharing my experience with you as a Norse pagan in this modern world. And I'm learning new and incredible things every day. I'm going through struggles in this faith, just like you. I'm definitely not perfect. And sitting down today, reading the Have 'Em All again, walking through the streets of Munich on this beautiful, cold, almost autumn day, and just take your time in life. This kind of conversation right here, where I'm just sitting on a park bench, talking with you one-on-one like we would be if I was at a gathering, or if like we were getting a cup of coffee, or like you were sitting here on this very park bench. To me, one of the most amazing and magical things about this faith is it teaches us to slow down and observe our natural world. And we're doing it in a way our ancestors never did. And that is a true honor and a blessing that we should really take hold of. The world, yes, is full of dark and terrible things, as it always has been. But the world is also full of so much good. And we really live in an age of opportunity to enjoy those good things. One of the things that makes us uniquely human is the fact that we are able to admire beauty. I mean, from what I can tell in the animal world, and what I know, we hardly ever see creatures or just other living things that can admire beauty like we can. We can connect to something that is beautiful and magical on such a deeper level. We have evolved past just the simple need to survive. We have evolved to the point where we can experience the world. We can experience things that deeply affect us, that affect our souls and who we are. And something that we are losing very quickly is the ability to slow down, the ability to wander with wanderlust, the ability to see what this world really is. So my name is Jacob, and I'm a Norse pagan, and today I'm here to remind you that in this modern world, I know so many of us long for the past, but truly, the most beautiful things that exist in this world can still be observed today, only if we stop and wander with wanderlust. even right now as I'm speaking, and I took a brief pause to kind of gather my thoughts again. There's beautiful music being played a few blocks away. I can kind of hear it on the wind. And it makes this moment even more perfect. And once again, I would argue that, things like music, things like art, these creative endeavors are something that are so unique to who we are. And so when you combine art, music, a faith, the natural world, all of these things, these are what it is good to be human. These are the things that make it worth living, and those things can still be obtained today. Those things can still be admired and appreciated for. And so those are the things that we should attach to as humans, to cast aside the darkness, to live through these moments. We can still create beauty. And no matter how dark the world has gotten, no matter how bad it may seem, these things have persisted, these things have continued, have evolved. It's the simple things in life that make it worth living. This is what religion should be.